Shalom, and welcome to Psychology of the Parsha for Parshat Vayakhel. The Parsha begins, Vayakhel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Yisrael. Moshe gathered the entire congregation of the children of Israel. Now notice that it says here congregation, and it says the children of Israel. Typically, it would say either or. Either it would say he gathered the entire congregation, or he gathered all the children of Israel. Over here, it seems to be almost like a repetitive. For what? Why? So it's interesting that the Or HaChaim, the great commentary on the Torah, which is in fact laced with a lot of Kabbalah, explains that this is to point out that when Moshe gathered the entire congregation, it was specifically the congregation of the children of Israel. And typically when it says B'nai Yisrael, or like in this case when it emphasizes B'nai Yisrael, it means the men. Now I know you may be thinking, what, only the men had to be gathered here and not the women? This wasn't important to the women? In fact, it was more important to the women. In fact, the women played a much greater role in what's going to be discussed here, namely the construction of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, of the holy dwelling place of Hashem's glory. So why does the Torah point out that he gathered the children of Israel? So the Or HaChaim explains that what it's trying to tell us is, or what it's telling us, is that he made two separate gatherings. There was the gathering for the men, and there was the gathering for the women. But make no mistake, as I mentioned, the women play a greater role in the construction, especially in the donations of the Holy Temple, even more than the men. In fact, later on, the Torah describes how Vayavo Hanashim al Hanashim. The men came al literally means on, over, meaning the women came first, then came the men. The men were almost like secondary to the women. On a deeper level, the reason why that was so is that the women's contribution to the Holy Temple was greater, not only physically, but that stems actually from the spiritual aspect of things, and that is the women, their stuff was never tainted, not even in the most remotest way. Why not? Because they had no part in the sin of the golden calf. The men, even those who didn't sin, but they were guilty by association. So their material goods, their material possessions, somewhat even remotely tainted with the sin of the golden calf. So it wasn't as pure as the women's. If that's the case, why would Moshe go about making two separate gatherings to tell them the exact same thing? And the answer is that one needs to take a lesson from this. There are times when we think, at least psychologically, that we're not in any spiritual danger of perhaps slipping, perhaps doing something that's not, let's just say, not the best thing to do. Let's just say not the most modestly okay thing to do. And the reason why we kind of allow ourselves to let our guard down is because we say to ourselves in our minds, and we try to rationalize, look, I'm engaged in a spiritual endeavor. I am engaged, I am pursuing here a matter that is inherently holy. There's no way that I'm going to slip. There's no way that anything can go wrong in terms of, modesty, the rules of not commingling men, women, and so on. And that maybe would apply here. And that's what the Torah is teaching us. That even when it comes to matters such holy as building the Mishkan, building the dwelling place, who would have the capacity for any other thought other than God, other than holiness, other than building an abode for Hashem. Yet, Moshe made sure to take the necessary precautions and keep the men and the women separate. Now, the Rebbe adds, that's not to say that any one has a greater role than the other. It's just saying that each one functions in their own unique way. And that also helps explain why Moshe couldn't just gather them side by side and simultaneously say it to them. Just as a metaphor, you think about the two most vital, the two most crucial organs in the body that help the entire body function and make us who we are, namely the heart and the brain. Each one is vital. Each one is imperatively important for the person's life. Yet they function in two totally different ways. And what's good for the heart is not good for the brain. What's good for the brain is not good for the heart. A little oxygen in the wrong place in the heart can kill the person. Blood in the wrong place in the brain can kill the person, whereas the heart is full of blood. And that's just to give us a perspective that even if we're giving a Torah class, even if we're doing something of tremendous holiness, we need to make sure, we need to be sure that we follow what the halacha says in terms of keeping a separation and not commingling between men and women. That is not to say that one is better than the other. In fact, in this case, the women turned out to be greater. Their role was greater and much holier than that of the men. Shalom.